Every day begins the same, not with the world watching, not with applause or demand, but with a simple silent moment. You waking up. And in that moment, before a single decision is made, before a single email is answered, or a single deal is done, there is a truth waiting to be earned. And that truth is this: did you rise with dignity, or did you roll into the day like someone who doesn't know the value of time? You see, I learned a long time ago that the first hour of your morning tells the truth about your philosophy. It reveals your priorities before you even speak. How you greet the day is how you greet life. And I'm not talking about routine just for the sake of ticking boxes. I'm talking about respect, self-respect, the kind that isn't given, it's earned. And you earn it in the dark when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when you make that first choice between reaching for growth or reaching for the snooze button. Now, some people live their mornings like an accident. They wake up with no plan, no structure, no clarity. They let the phone scream first. They scroll before they stretch. They drift before they decide. And I'll tell you what happens to those people. They spend their whole day trying to catch up. Their thoughts are scattered. Their energy is split. And by the time they feel ready, the day is already gone. And what's worse, they don't feel good. Not because they didn't work hard. No, many people are busy, but they don't feel proud. They don't feel aligned because deep down they know they didn't command their life. They reacted to it. But let me give you another picture. Imagine the man or woman who rises before the sun and stands in front of the mirror, not to admire vanity, but to check alignment. They breathe, they stretch, they read, they write, they decide. They don't stumble into the day. They step into it on purpose, with clarity. And I'll tell you this: when you earn your own respect before the world wakes up, the world begins to treat you differently. You speak differently. You walk differently. You're not performing. You're embodying. You're becoming someone who deserves their own attention, their own time, their own energy. That is the quiet foundation of success. The first hour is not about productivity. It's about proof. Proof that you are becoming someone disciplined, someone organized, someone capable of seeing past the comfort of a warm bed into the promise of a strong life. Because the first hour is yours. The rest of the world doesn't own it yet, and that makes it sacred. You don't owe it to your boss or your family or your clients. You owe it to yourself, to your future, to the version of you that's waiting to be built through choices repeated in silence. So I ask you, what did your first hour say about you today? Did it speak of structure, of vision, of intentional living? Or did it whisper of drift, delay, and default settings? Did you set the tone for your day, or did you hand that power over to distractions? Because I promise you, the day listens. The world listens. People can feel when you've already earned your own respect before the meeting begins. You don't have to raise your voice or prove yourself loudly. You carry it, you wear it. It's in your shoulders, your eyes, your calm. That's what the morning gives you when you claim it. Let this be the first principle we anchor today. The first hour reveals the first truth. And if that truth is built on self-respect, on discipline, on intention, then every other hour is more likely to follow suit. You are not late, but you are responsible. So starting tomorrow, don't just wake up. Rise up. Rise with clarity. Rise with structure. Rise with purpose. Because a man who can master his morning can begin to master his life. And when you live like that long enough, you don't just earn respect. You become someone you're proud to respect. Let's move deeper into this. Let's talk about what your morning is really saying about you before you ever open your mouth. Stand in front of a mirror tomorrow morning, not just to fix your hair, not to adjust your collar, but to ask yourself a question that most people avoid their entire life. What is this reflection saying about who I am becoming? Because let me tell you something I learned early. The mirror is not just a tool for grooming. It's a teacher. And every morning it reflects more than your physical features. It reflects your philosophy. It reflects your beliefs. It reflects your internal dialogue, painted in silence across your posture, your expression, your preparation. And what you do in front of it, what you ignore, what you fix, what you tolerate, becomes a metaphor for how you handle everything else. You see, we all live by a philosophy, whether we've written it down or not, whether we've thought about it consciously or just absorbed it from those around us. There's a code we operate by. Some say, I'll figure it out later. That's a philosophy. Others say, I'll dress up when it matters. That's a philosophy too. But I say this, every day matters. Every moment is rehearsal for the future. And the way you begin your day is the most honest declaration of what you believe you deserve. Now here's the challenge. Most people's appearance is an accidental result of habit, not a deliberate reflection of vision. They don't wake up and say, what would a man of value wear today? How would he walk? What would he read? No, they wake up and reach for the nearest thing. They drag their mindset from the previous night's mood. They don't tell the day what they want from it. They wait to see what it hands them. And in doing so, they live in reaction. They live at the mercy of momentum, not mastery. But here's the truth. When you live that way long enough, your mirror stops being neutral. It begins to reflect back a version of yourself you don't fully respect. And over time, you avoid it. You stop looking. You stop adjusting. And eventually, you stop growing. But what if you changed it? What if you turned your mirror into a moment of intention? What if you began your day not by rushing into obligation, but by standing still, looking yourself in the eyes and asking, is this man aligned with where he wants to go? That's not vanity. That's accountability. That's leadership. And it's in that stillness, that confrontation with self, that you begin to rise. Because how you treat yourself when no one is watching becomes the foundation of how others treat you when everyone is watching. And let me go even further. The mirror not only reflects your values, it trains them. Because what you consistently present, you begin to believe. If you dress like a leader, groom like someone with standards, speak like someone with dignity, even before you feel it, your subconscious begins to align. This is why I say, don't wait to feel confident to act confident. Act confident first. Dress well first. Prepare your space first. Because those choices tell your inner world, we are becoming someone of purpose. And your mind listens. And then your habits follow. And then your results catch up. So here's what I want you to take away from this chapter. Your morning reflection is your report card, not of perfection, but of principle. It's not about how expensive your clothes are or how trendy your style is. It's about the presence you bring to the start of your day. It's about whether you chose intentionality over instinct, whether you said, I will rise with clarity, or whether you let the fog of yesterday drift into today. Look at yourself tomorrow morning, not to criticize, but to calibrate. Look not for flaws, but for alignment. Ask yourself, does this man look like he respects his own time, his own vision, his own potential? And if the answer is no, don't run, don't rationalize, adjust, clean up, stand straight, or choose better. Because the world will always reflect what you first project. And if you want more respect from life, it starts by earning it in the mirror, one honest morning at a time. Now let's move forward. Let's examine what happens when we ignore this principle, what it costs us when we allow our mornings to become neglected, unguarded, and unworthy of our own respect. Because the bill for sloppiness always comes due, and the cost is often higher than we realize. Let's talk about that next. There's a price to neglect, and the truth is it's always higher than you thought you'd pay. It never comes all at once. That would be too easy to notice, too easy to correct. No, it comes in quiet installments, in lost energy, in faded confidence, in missed opportunities that never even introduce themselves. And it starts with little things. It starts when you say, it doesn't really matter if I sleep in today. It starts when you say, no one will notice if I don't shave, if I don't plan, if I don't show up sharp. And maybe no one does notice at first, but you do. Your subconscious keeps score, and your soul takes notes. You begin to lose the edge, not because life took it from you, but because you gave it away. And here's the deception. It feels small. Skipping the morning walk, checking your phone instead of reading something valuable, drinking coffee while scrolling instead of sitting still to define your goals. But over time, these small acts of neglect create a pattern, and that pattern becomes your presence. You don't even have to speak. People can feel when you're uncentered, when your life is out of sync with discipline, when you're showing up unready, unclear, and uncertain. You know what else neglect steals? Respect, not just from others, although that happens too, but from yourself. And once self-respect begins to erode, everything else becomes harder. You start negotiating with your own excuses. You start believing your own justifications. You start creating mental stories about why this season is different or why you'll start when things calm down. But deep down, you know better. You know it's not the season, it's the standard. And the standard is dropping 1 inch at a time. The real cost of neglect isn't what you lose today, it's what you lose forever because you never created the structure to receive it. That's the tragedy. A man can miss 10 years of his potential and not know it simply because he never learned to own his morning. He never learned that respect is earned at sunrise, not at the podium. That character is proven in silence, not in applause. And that if you can't lead yourself when no one is watching, you'll never lead others when everyone is watching. Think of it like rust. Rust doesn't roar in like a storm. It creeps. It forms in silence, in stillness, in moments of inattention. And once it takes root, it eats away at the foundation. That's what happens to your habits when you stop guarding the morning. The small compromises begin to stack. The clothes stay wrinkled. The journal remains blank. The posture slouches. The voice loses conviction. And soon, your external world begins to reflect your internal indifference. Now, I don't say this to shame you. I say this to wake you up. Because if you've been living in neglect, you're not broken. You're simply untrained. And training can be changed. Standards can be raised. But it begins with awareness, with truth, with the decision to stop tolerating the gap between who you are and who you were meant to be. You don't fix neglect with a motivational quote or a new planner. You fix it by reclaiming your rituals, by deciding, I may not control every part of this day, but I will command the first hour. That's your leverage point. That's your anchor. That's where strength is forged. So the question is, what has neglect cost you already? Not just in money, but in momentum, in identity, in confidence. And more importantly, are you ready to stop the bleeding? Because you can, right now, not next week, not next quarter, right now. It starts by waking up with conviction. It starts by saying, I will not hand my dignity over to convenience anymore. That's the moment neglect begins to lose its grip. Now that we've faced what happens when you let the morning slip, let's shift. Let's talk about the opposite. Let's talk about what happens when you build your mornings on the foundation of respect, intention, and clarity. When you choose refinement, not neglect, discipline, not drift, and when you carry that into every decision you make before the world even sees your face. Let's move into the principle that turns sloppiness into sophistication, one morning at a time. If you want to begin changing your income, your reputation, your influence, your trajectory, start with one thing, respect. And I'm not talking about the kind that comes from others. That's a byproduct. I'm talking about the kind that begins at the mirror before a single soul sees you, self-respect. The kind that whispers, today I'm showing up with excellence, not because I have to, but because that's who I am. That kind of respect is earned, not inherited. And it doesn't begin in the boardroom or the big moment. It begins in the morning with the quiet choices you make about how you live, how you move, how you present yourself to the world. Now let's add another word to this conversation, refinement. Refinement is not about wealth. It's not about luxury. It's about intention. It's about details. It's about taking the ordinary and doing it with such care that it becomes uncommon. Think about this. Two men can wear the same jacket, but one presses it, pairs it, stands in it like a man who respects himself. The other throws it on like armor he doesn't believe in. What's the difference? Refinement. And refinement communicates long before you ever open your mouth. The way you enter a room, the way you shake a hand, the way you speak, not just in words, but in posture, tone, attentiveness. These are all signals, and people are always reading those signals. The question is, what are they learning about you before you've even said a word? See, respect begins with how you treat yourself, and the fastest way to measure that is in how you handle the details no one else sees. Do you shave like someone preparing for something important or like someone checking off a chore? Do you plan your morning with precision, or do you wander into it hoping you'll stumble into productivity? These aren't just lifestyle choices, they're philosophical declarations. They say something about what you believe you deserve, about what you believe is possible, and about what you expect from yourself, and the marketplace picks up on it fast. People often ask me, Jim, what changed for you when you started seeing success? And I always tell them, my standard changed. I stopped showing up for the world unprepared. I stopped treating my life like a reaction. I started walking into the day like someone who belonged in the room. And I didn't wait for permission. I gave myself that permission by how I showed up, clean, sharp, on time, mentally prepared, energetically aligned. And you know what happened? People started listening differently. Not because I forced it, but because I had already earned my own respect before I ever asked for theirs. There's a simple test I give myself to this day. Would I hire me? That's the mirror test. Not, would I tolerate me? Not, am I slightly better than average, but would I invest in this man? Would I follow his example? Would I bet on him? And if the answer is no, I don't get defensive. I don't justify or make excuses. I refine. I get sharper. Because the world doesn't rise to meet your desires. It rises to meet your demonstrated standard. And here's the secret. Refinement practiced long enough becomes charisma. People call it presence. They say there's something about him, but that something is built. It's earned. It's rehearsed in silence. It's stitched into the fabric of your habits. And it starts when you treat your morning as a sacred space, not a rushed ritual. When you give your body, your environment, your thoughts the same care you'd give to your most important work, because they are your most important work. So let me ask you this. Where in your morning are you still casual? Where are you still treating yourself like someone who doesn't deserve the highest version of their own presence? And what would change if you stopped rushing through the start of your day like it's a burden and started walking through it like it's a cathedral? Because that's what it is. Your morning is the architecture of your identity, and every refined decision you make in it becomes a brick in the foundation of the person you're becoming. Let's go even deeper. Let's explore how this principle of respect and refinement shows up, not just in your posture and your mirror, but in your income. Because like it or not, how you begin your day changes what the day is willing to give you in return. Let's talk about how your image, shaped in private, affects your reward in the marketplace. The next chapter is about money, but not the way most people talk about it. Let's move into from image to income and see what discipline truly deposits into your life. Let me say it plainly. You don't get paid for time. You get paid for value, and the perception of your value begins before you even open your mouth. In the real world, people see you before they hear you. They judge your preparation before they experience your performance. And the ones who understand this, who take it seriously, are the ones who start pulling ahead. Not because they're better human beings, not because they're more deserving at birth, but because they've aligned their outer world with the standard they're holding on the inside. And that alignment is rare. That alignment is magnetic. That alignment, when seen enough and felt consistently, starts translating directly into income. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying a $500 suit will make you rich. A suit alone doesn't build wealth. Discipline does. But a suit, when paired with sharp thinking, prepared language, excellent manners, and consistent delivery, that combination begins to open doors. Why? Because it signals readiness. It tells the marketplace, this man respects himself enough to prepare, to sharpen, to honor this interaction. And if he honors this moment, I can trust him to honor the next one. That's how opportunity works. It looks for signs. And your appearance, your grooming, your order, your energy is the first sign you give it. Let me share something that changed everything for me. The realization that people don't pay for raw potential. They pay for visible structure. They want to know that your life is in order before they place their trust, their time, or their money in your hands. Think about it. Would you hire a financial advisor who looks unshaven, disheveled, distracted? Would you trust a coach who walks into the room 10 minutes late, mumbling, scrambling for notes? Of course not, because their outer disorder signals inner disorder. And you intuitively know that wherever there is visible chaos, there is likely invisible compromise. But now flip that image. Imagine a man who walks in polished, not flashy, but intentional. His clothes are clean and tailored. His posture is upright. His handshake is firm. His voice is steady. He looks you in the eyes. He's not rushing. He's not apologizing. He's not adjusting. He's already ready. What happens? Trust rises. Respect rises. And the perceived value of everything he says is elevated before he even begins. That's what image does. It sets the stage for credibility. And credibility is the foundation of compensation. Now, someone might say, Jim, isn't this all surface level? Isn't it shallow to judge someone based on appearance? Let me be clear. I'm not telling you to obsess over looks. I'm telling you to align your appearance with your intention, to match your presence with your preparation, because the world is visual, the world is fast, and most decisions are made before the full story is heard. So if you want to tell the right story, start with the right signal. It's not vanity, it's stewardship. You are the steward of your reputation. You are the steward of how the world experiences you. And every detail, the crease in your shirt, the way you speak your name, the pace of your walk, either builds trust or chips away at it. And when trust is high, transactions happen. Deals move. People listen longer. They invite you to higher tables, more rooms, deeper partnerships. Not because you trick them, but because you train them to see you as someone who takes life seriously. And here's the beautiful part. When you start showing up like that, it doesn't just affect your income. It affects your identity. You begin to believe in your own future again. You begin to carry yourself like someone who expects excellence. And that expectation changes the way you invest, the way you speak, the way you negotiate, the way you handle pressure. Why? Because you're not pretending. You're becoming. And the marketplace responds to people who are becoming. So let me ask you, what message is your current image sending to the people who could promote you, hire you, partner with you, refer you? Is it saying this man is ready for more? Or is it saying he's still figuring himself out? And if it's the latter, don't panic. Just pivot. You don't need a complete makeover. You need one decision. Start sharpening. Start refining. Not for ego, for alignment, for integrity, for results. Now let's take this principle and make it practical. You may be thinking, Okay, Jim, I get it, but where do I start? Good question, because you don't need 50 changes. You need a few small shifts done consistently to begin signaling something different to yourself and to the world. So, in the next chapter, we'll break this down. We'll look at the subtle decisions that carry massive weight, the little adjustments that send big signals. Let's move into that now. Small shifts, big signals, because excellence is built in the margins. You don't need to flip your entire life upside down to start earning more respect. You just need to stop ignoring the signals you're already sending. The good news is, most of the signals that shape how others see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself, come from small habits, not grand gestures. The way you polish your shoes, the way you groom your beard, the way you sit at a table. These details, while easily dismissed, are not trivial. They are signals. And in a world flooded with noise, the person who communicates care through details stands out without shouting. Let's begin with something simple, your shoes. You might say, Jim, shoes don't matter, but they do. Because if you don't take care of what carries you, what message does that send about how you carry everything else? Scuffed shoes, torn soles, untied laces, they whisper something to every eye that notices. They whisper that you're moving through life in a hurry, that you've stopped checking the mirror, that maybe, just maybe, you've started slipping. But shine those shoes, and something different happens. You walk differently. You sit straighter. You become aware, not of the shoes themselves, but of the effort you've invested. That shine becomes a ritual. It becomes a rehearsal of excellence before your day begins. Now take grooming, a clean shave, a trimmed beard, a fresh scent. These aren't indulgences, they're acts of intention. Because grooming is more than hygiene. It's a quiet act of discipline that says, I matter enough to prepare. When you walk into a room with intention written on your face, literally, it changes how you're received. People don't know why they take you more seriously. They just do. And it's not about being flashy. It's about being ordered. It's about looking like someone who respects where he's going. How about your shirt? Is it wrinkled or pressed? Because an ironed shirt speaks. It says, I showed up on purpose. It says, details matter to me. It says, I'm ready. And the best part, no one will ever stop you in the street to thank you for it. But they will treat you differently. They'll lean in. They'll listen longer. They'll hand you opportunity with less resistance. Why? Because your appearance already did the heavy lifting. Your discipline earned you a longer runway. Even the way you walk, yes, the pace and posture sends a message. Do you stroll through life like someone who's drifting, or do you move like someone on assignment? When you walk with purpose, your energy changes. You communicate urgency without anxiety. You move with intention, and the world starts moving around you differently. Try it. Tomorrow morning, instead of dragging your body like it's chained to the bed you left behind, move like you're headed somewhere that matters and see what happens, not just externally, but internally. You'll find that motion feeds momentum, and momentum feeds belief. And then there's your voice, your tone, your presence when you speak to the barista, the janitor, the client, the stranger. Is your tone lazy or lifted? Are your words mumbled or measured? Every interaction you have sends signals. And the person who learns to send signals of poise, of precision, of care, wins influence without demanding it. These small signals are your resume long before you hand someone a piece of paper. Now, let me be honest. Most people won't notice these things explicitly. They won't stop you to say, I admire the way you take notes in that meeting, or I respect the way your shoes are shined. But they will feel it. And over time, that feeling builds something powerful, trust. And where there is trust, there is access. Access to higher circles, access to better opportunities, access to partnerships that don't get advertised on job boards. Because people are always watching for someone who looks like they care enough to carry responsibility well. So if you've been thinking you need a dramatic transformation to turn your life around, let this be your wake-up call. You don't. You just need to start sending better signals. Start by making your bed. Start by ironing your shirt. Start by grooming like someone who is headed somewhere important. And keep doing it. Day after day, because small signals compound. They create a rhythm. They train your mind to expect excellence. And when your mind expects excellence, your results eventually align. Remember, excellence doesn't need to shout. It whispers through the way you live. And if you can master the whispers, the world will begin to echo back something powerful: respect, trust, and opportunity. So now that we've talked about these small shifts, let's take it a step further. Let's talk about how to build your personal standard. Not based on trends or other people's approval, but on the identity you want to embody. Let's move there now, because if your mornings don't have a standard, they will always default to survival. And we're not here to survive, we're here to rise. At some point, every man has to sit down with himself and decide, What do I stand for? Not what do I say I stand for when people are watching. Not what do I post about when I feel motivated, but what do I actually stand for when the doors are closed and the alarm rings and no one else is coming to hold me accountable? That's the question that defines a personal standard. And without it, you're not leading your life. You're reacting to it. See, life responds to standards, not to moods. The man who builds his mornings on emotion will always be at the mercy of the weather, the traffic, the news, the stress, the alarm clock. But the man who builds his mornings on principle, he's untouchable because he doesn't need things to be easy in order to be excellent. He just needs to remember who he is and what he expects of himself. And that's what a personal standard does. It becomes a compass when the winds of life start to blow you off course. So how do you build it? How do you actually develop a personal standard that elevates your appearance, your energy, and your income? You begin by deciding what you represent, not who you are on your worst day, but who you're becoming on your best day. You ask yourself, if I were the man I admire, how would he walk into the morning? Would he hit snooze? Would he show up unprepared? Would he throw on clothes without thinking? Or would he approach the morning with clarity and conviction? It's not about pretending. It's about practicing. You begin to dress like someone you respect. You begin to move like someone who values his time. You begin to speak like someone whose words carry weight. And you do this before anyone else validates it. Why? Because respect starts in the mirror. You don't become worthy of opportunity by waiting for it to arrive. You prepare for it in advance. When I was a young man, I had to face the truth. I was not impressive. Not because I lacked potential, but because I lacked standards. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't think presentation mattered. I thought all I needed was talent. But the world doesn't pay for potential. It pays for proof. And proof comes when you consistently behave in alignment with your values. So I made the shift. I raised the bar. Not because someone told me to, but because I was tired of living beneath my own capabilities. I started dressing like I was already successful, thinking like I was already responsible, showing up like I was already trusted. And slowly, life began to match that vision. Here's the key. Your standard doesn't have to be loud. In fact, the best standards are silent. You don't need to announce that you wake up early. Just do it. You don't need to post about your morning routine. Just live it. Because when it's real, you don't need to advertise it. The results will speak loud enough. Now, let me warn you, when you raise your standard, your old habits won't go quietly. They'll argue. They'll whisper, you've earned a break. It's not a big deal. Nobody will notice. But your standard isn't for them. It's for you. It's a line in the sand that says, from this day forward, I show up differently. And when that becomes non-negotiable, you stop apologizing for having boundaries. You stop negotiating with your lower self. You stop hoping that your life will change, and you start becoming the man who changes it. So set it in stone. What do you expect of yourself before the world sees you? What are your non-negotiables in the morning? Clean clothes, sharp grooming, a made bed, a quiet moment of reflection, a review of your goals. Choose 5. Start there. Build your code. Write it down. Live it out. Let it become your silent identity. And here's the payoff. Once your personal standard becomes consistent, something beautiful happens. People begin to trust you without knowing why. They feel your discipline. They sense your order. And the opportunities that once ignored you begin to find their way into your life. Not because you chased them, but because you became someone worthy of them. Let's keep building. Next, we're going to talk about the rhythm of sophistication. The idea that greatness is not about being flashy, but about doing the basics with such excellence that people can't help but notice. And that begins in your daily routine. Let's talk about how sophistication, when practiced, becomes your silent advantage. Most people think sophistication is something you're born with, something that belongs to the elite, something handed down with a silver spoon. But that's a myth. Sophistication isn't about being wealthy. It's about being intentional. It's about how you handle the ordinary. It's about bringing care, thought, and order to the little things. The way you write your notes, the way you enter a room, the way you finish what you start. And it's available to anyone willing to pay the price and attention. I learned this early in my career, watching men who didn't just get things done, but got them done with class. I watched how they poured a cup of coffee, how they addressed people by name, how they closed a folder after a meeting. Nothing dramatic, nothing flashy, but everything was precise. Everything was deliberate. And that presence, that polish, it created an aura around them. People listened differently. People respected more quickly. Not because these men were loud, but because they were clear. And clarity is a byproduct of discipline. See, you don't wake up sophisticated, you practice it, you rehearse it in silence, you sharpen it in the mundane. Sophistication is how you hold the door open, how you keep your promises, how you speak to the waiter when no one else is watching. It's how you leave a room, not just physically, but emotionally. Do you leave people uplifted? Do you leave things cleaner than you found them? Do you leave conversations with clarity or confusion? Let me give you an example. When I travel, I always leave a tip in the hotel room, but I don't wait until checkout to leave it. I leave it on the first day. Why? Because it sets a tone. It communicates, I value what you do. And what do I get in return? Better service? Sometimes. But more importantly, I get to practice the discipline of leading with value. That's sophistication. It's not what you get, it's what you give. And when you become the kind of person who gives order, who gives thought, who gives effort, life begins giving back. Sophistication also lives in how you manage time. The sophisticated man is early, not because he's anxious, but because he's prepared. He knows that showing up early is a sign of honor. It says, you matter. This moment matters. I've already arrived in mind. Now I've arrived in body. And people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they notice. Because in a world that's rushed and reactive, the man who is composed becomes magnetic. And let's not forget speech. Sophistication shows up in how you talk. Do you finish your sentences? Do you speak with rhythm and purpose? Do you match your words to your values? You don't need a big vocabulary. You need clarity, and clarity requires thought. Thought requires pause. Sophistication doesn't ramble. It communicates, and communication is a form of respect. So ask yourself, where in your life have you been sloppy when you could have been sharp? Where have you been rushing when you could have been precise? Where have you been casual when the moment was calling for care? Because the man who decides to treat his life with more respect begins to receive more respect from others, yes, but first and foremost, from himself. Sophistication is also contagious. It raises the room. When you show up refined, people elevate. They sit straighter. They speak clearer. They follow your lead, not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it. And that, my friend, is power, not control, not ego, but influence born from example. And the best part, it doesn't take money to start. It takes decision. Decision to slow down and care. Decision to refine instead of rush. Decision to make the mundane meaningful. Because once you do, you become the kind of man who can be trusted with more. And the world gives more to those it can trust. So what would it look like to bring sophistication into your morning, into your appearance, into your tone, your timing, your tools? Start small. Polish your shoes. Press your shirt. Practice your greeting. Think before you speak. Leave things better than you found them. That's how you become magnetic. That's how you stand out in a world that's forgotten what excellence looks like. Now let's keep building. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the powerful loop between appearance and self-respect. How the way you carry yourself changes the way you think about yourself, and how the world begins to mirror back what you believe you're worth. This is where philosophy becomes identity. Let's walk into that truth together. There's a powerful truth that most men never discover, not because it's hidden, but because it's too simple. It's this: the way you carry yourself changes the way you see yourself, and the way you see yourself changes the way others treat you. It's a loop, a quiet, compounding loop. You look sharp, you feel sharp. You feel sharp, you act with confidence. You act with confidence, others respond with trust. And that trust, in turn, reaffirms the image you started with. That's the cause-effect loop of self-respect. It starts in the mirror, but it ends in the marketplace. Now, let me be clear. This loop doesn't begin with ego. It doesn't start with pretending to be something you're not. It begins with honoring the man you're trying to become, even before anyone else believes in him. Because if you wait for the world to affirm your worth before you act like it, you'll be waiting your whole life. The man of self-respect gets dressed before the opportunity comes. He gets sharp before the meeting is scheduled. He walks tall before the room is filled. Why? Because he respects the vision he's building. He understands that cause comes before effect. When I began changing my life, I didn't have money. I didn't have prestige. I didn't even have much confidence. But I had one thing. I had a reason to stop drifting, a reason to stop blending in, a reason to show up with excellence, even if no one noticed. And so I began to dress just a little better. I began to stand just a little taller. I began to speak with more purpose. And let me tell you, my outer world didn't change overnight, but I did. And that changed everything. Because something happens when you look in the mirror and you know you've shown up with care. You walk differently. You speak without apology. You expect better. Not in arrogance, but in alignment. You start to carry the weight of your life with dignity. You stop waiting to be chosen, and you start choosing yourself. That's not hype. That's philosophy in motion. And the people around you, they pick up on it. They can't always explain it, but they feel it. They sense the man who's done the internal work, who holds himself to a higher standard, who doesn't need validation because he's already approved of the way he lives. That's power. That's influence. That's magnetism. And it begins with one small daily decision: to dress, to speak, to act in a way that says, I am becoming someone worth following. See, self-respect isn't loud. It's not about showing off. It's about showing up day after day with order, with energy, with care. And when that becomes your rhythm, you stop fearing rejection because your worth isn't on trial anymore. You've already passed the test you give yourself each morning. That's what I want for you. I want you to build a life where self-respect is baked into your habits, where every shirt you iron, every word you choose, every step you take is a declaration of identity, not perfection, not performance, but principle, because principle builds identity and identity builds results. The results don't create the man creates the results. So if your mornings feel rushed, chaotic, careless, don't just change your schedule, change your philosophy. See every morning as a chance to complete the loop. Cause, effect, cause. Look sharp to feel sharp to act sharp to earn respect to deepen belief. And belief becomes the engine that drives everything else. We've walked through appearance, standards, sophistication, and now self-respect. But there's one more level I want to explore with you. One final layer where the internal and external meet in perfect symbolism. It's what I call the internal garden. Because just like a garden, your grooming, your care, your outer presence, it reflects what's growing on the inside. And if you've been feeling disordered or invisible or stuck, that's where we're going to clean house. Let's talk about the deeper metaphor behind grooming and how tending to it is actually tending to your soul. Let's go there now. One of the most powerful metaphors I ever learned was this: your life is a garden, not a factory, not a lottery ticket, a garden. And what does that mean? It means your results don't arrive all at once. They grow slowly, quietly, and only in response to care. It also means that neglect has a cost. Because in a garden, weeds don't wait for your permission. They come by default. They grow fast, wild, and without discipline. And unless you tend to them daily, they'll take over. Now let's bring this home. Your grooming is your daily weeding. The way you care for your hair, your breath, your nails, your scent. It's not vanity, it's stewardship. Because the body is a messenger. And whether you realize it or not, you're preaching a message every time you show up. Grooming is the sermon your subconscious listens to every morning. It says, I matter. This day matters. How I show up matters. And when you say that with consistency, something shifts deep inside you. I've seen it time and time again. Men who start to fall apart don't begin with major mistakes. They begin with small indifferences. They let things go. They stop shaving. They stop tucking in the shirt. They stop checking the mirror. And they justify it with phrases like, I've been busy, or it's not about looks. But underneath that excuse is something more dangerous. A belief that says, I'm not worth the effort anymore. That's the beginning of erosion. That's when the internal garden starts dying. But here's the truth. When you change your grooming, you interrupt that decay. You say, no more weeds, not today. You stand in front of the mirror and you reclaim order, one small discipline at a time. You trim the beard, not because it's fashionable, but because it's symbolic. You align your tie, not for the world, but for your future. You look yourself in the eye, not for approval, but for alignment. Because if you can't trust yourself to show up in the mirror, you can't expect the world to trust you in the boardroom. I remember working with a young man once who told me, Jim, I just don't feel motivated anymore. I looked at him and he was slouched, untucked, eyes down, hair messy. I said, start with your shoes. He laughed. I didn't. Shine your shoes every morning for 30 days, I told him. Don't miss a day, then come back and tell me how you feel. He came back a month later. Upright, focused, sharper, not because of the shoes, but because of the care. Because every morning he told himself, this matters. And that belief started growing new roots in his soul. That's the secret. Grooming isn't about impressing people. It's about reminding yourself that order is possible, that control is yours to reclaim, that identity can be cultivated. Every time you look in the mirror and take action to present your best, you silence the voice of self-neglect. You drown out the whispers that say, what's the point? You answer that question with action. And here's the irony. The more you care, the less you need to worry. The more ordered your outer world becomes, the freer your inner world feels. Because clarity replaces chaos. Confidence replaces confusion. You don't need to second guess yourself when you've already proven you can show up with dignity. So I ask you, what would change if you began to treat your grooming as a ritual, not a task? What if brushing your teeth became a reminder that your words have weight? What if trimming your beard became a reflection of the clarity you want in your decisions? What if applying cologne became a symbol of the presence you carry into every room? You're not just preparing your body, you're preparing your character. And once you begin seeing it that way, something shifts forever. You start respecting your own time. You stop tolerating sloppiness, not just in your closet, but in your conversations, your commitments, your conduct. You begin to understand that how you do anything really is how you do everything. Because excellence is a lifestyle, not a performance. It's not for show, it's for you. Let's bring this home. In the final section, I'm going to leave you with a charge, not just advice, a declaration, because the world will always reflect the man you present. So the question is, are you dressing for the past you've been stuck in, or for the future you've decided to step into? Let's finish strong with the final invitation to live, look, and lead like the man you were meant to become. Now we come to the close, not the end of the message, but the beginning of a new standard, a new expectation, a new mirror you choose to stand in front of each day, not just to check your reflection, but to reinforce your direction. And here's the truth that ties everything together. You've got to start looking like where you're going, not where you've been. Because your appearance is not just a snapshot of today, it's a signal about your future. It tells the world what you believe you're becoming. Most people dress for comfort, not calling. They wake up and throw on the past. Yesterday's thoughts, yesterday's emotions, yesterday's indifference. But the man who decides to grow must also decide to show it. You don't wait until the world pays you more before you look the part. You look the part to tell the world you've raised your worth. It's not pretense, it's principle. You are becoming the kind of person who deserves better because you are treating yourself better. You're sending the message before the message is needed, and the world responds to that. You want to earn more, respect more, be trusted with more? Then start here. Look like someone who is already living the life you're building. Show up like someone who was chosen to lead. Walk like someone on assignment. Speak like someone with weight behind his words. Groom like someone who's already in the room you want to enter. That's not vanity. That's vision made visible. So from this day forward, let that mirror in the morning become your accountability partner. Let it ask you, are you preparing or procrastinating? Are you drifting or deciding? Because how you answer in your appearance will shape how others answer when they meet you. Now here's your challenge. Real simple, real personal. Every morning for the next 30 days, show up like the man you respect. Dress for the future, not the fatigue. Present yourself in a way that says, I'm here, I'm ready, and I take myself seriously. Let every button you fasten, every collar you press, every detail you polish, whisper one powerful phrase to your spirit, I am worth the effort. Say it again until you believe it. Then let the world say it back to you through the doors that open, the eyes that notice, the respect that follows, and the income that rises. Because the world pays you in proportion to how you show up. So raise the standard, elevate the mirror, and don't just talk about growth. Look like growth. Every morning, no exceptions, no off days. You're not dressing for now. You're dressing for who you're becoming. Now go out and become him.